everybody. Kim K back with you here on GeForce TV for another episode of the Power Hour. I want to thank Drive-Thru Designs for the absolutely cool, beautiful looking no logo for our show here. A little bit of a different design. We're still trying to work on some improvements for the show all off season long, but I want to start with of course, in condolences of the man directly beneath me here on this graphic. Unfortunately, we lost a Canadian legend at this week. And I know more people would maybe be familiar with the Coy Gibbs passing away for NASCAR down south, but here it is. Unfortunately, we lost a true competitor and a longtime competitor within the Canadian motorsport realm. Bob Merrifield passed away. Long tenured driver within the Ontario Sportsman Series, a CASCAR competitor, legendary racer across Ontario, and you're always familiar with that his number 43 out on the racetrack. I see Gary Culling in the chat. I'm sure Gary would have a memory of Bob Merrifield at some point racing across at Flamborough Speedway. It is a sad thing that we say goodbye to Bob Merrifield, but one thing that we can say is that Bob was one of the competitors that stuck around in the OSS series for so many years, a loyal competitor and somebody who routinely was a source of friendliness, a source of competitiveness, but humbleness in the garage. And I was not lucky enough to meet the man, but from everybody that has talked about him within the OSS series, there's a reason why the Sportsmanship Award was named after him and now named after him in his honor. And that's because of the man that Bob Merrifield was, the competitor that he was. 43 Remax car. I mean, you always remember the Remax colors, whether it was in CASCAR, whether it was in the Sportsman Series, whether it was at Checkered Flag Speedway. You will always remember Bob Merrifield. So we wanted to put that up on the graphic here for you guys tonight. Bob, of course, not the only one that we lost this week. Unfortunately, Coy Gibbs, the vice president of Joe Gibbs Racing, and another son of Joe Gibbs, passing away in his sleep at the age of 49. And scarily enough, the same age that his brother JD passed away. And so all the hearts go out to everybody within Joe Gibbs' organization, anybody that knows that family, and Ty Gibbs going from the highest of highs, winning the championship on the Saturday, and unfortunately on the Sunday to have that news is just terrible. And no matter what you think of Ty Gibbs, no matter what you think of Joe Gibbs' organization, the one thing you have to remember is that a son was lost, a father was lost, a husband was lost. I mean, he had 4 kids. Ty was just one of them. And they all lost a father. And that's something that's really hard to hear. So we lost 2, one from Canada and one from the United States, people that had a big part in motorsports. And as Gary says, he is a great friend, and he was like an uncle to his kids. And from everybody that I've talked to and from what I've seen, he kind of had that role with a lot of people. It is a tough deal. As Gary says, his nephew works for the 11 team. Just so sad. And it's true. I mean, this isn't unheard of. We've seen this type of stuff happen, unfortunately, in racing. It does. I feel like Chris Rice, and that whole Cowlick Motorsports, they had a situation with a crew chief a couple of years ago, who was part of, I believe, a winning race team, and then the next Nick Harrison is what I'm referring to. And I believe it was like the following week that he had passed away, surprisingly. And it's very hard to hear these type of things, obviously coming off of the news of Noel Teal just a couple weeks ago as well. It's been a tough couple of weeks for the Canadian motorsports scene and racing in general to see people pass away. Mike Russell says that Bob was one of a kind and always had some great stories to be told, and I would expect that out of Bob. My memory of Bob Merrifield isn't maybe what everybody else has, because I only do know him from the Sportsman Series and only one race that I ever saw him in. And oddly enough, he wasn't driving a 43 at that time. He was driving a 45 Remax Dodge. And but Bob was always somebody that I would always see on the NASCAR lists of somebody that was going to be at the racetrack. And like I said, I wasn't privileged enough to see him actually race enough. Obviously, in the OSS series, Bob has been a huge part of that series. I mean, I don't feel that there is an OSS series without Bob Merrifield there. You had a lot of guys that ran in that series that, were in NASCAR, but couldn't run with the Pinty series. They couldn't run under a NASCAR budget. And that's where you got guys like Merrifield, McGlynn, Mike Alguire, Michael Herniak. That's where you got to see them on a weekly basis. And Bob wasn't going out there and lighting the world on fire, but he did get a couple of wins in the OSS series, and he will always be remembered as a true sportsman out there. And we are thankful to have the memories of Bob Merrifield as a competitor within Ontario. And I definitely think that our winner in the OSS series of the Sportsmanship Award, which was voted on by the competitors in the OSS series, and it was given to Kevin Trevelyan this year. And when I think of Kevin Trevelyan and kind of the personality that I get from him, he sounds very much like Bob in terms of the sportsmanship and always willing to lend a hand. And that's really what motorsports is about. It's about family. And unfortunately, we've lost a true member of our family this past week. So unfortunately, it does. I don't want things to be overshadowed here. And Bob Merrifield was a huge piece of Canadian motorsports racing. He was and will be remembered as just one of those great guys. It's a tough way to start this show, but you want to show respect for those who've paved the way in motorsports. And I would definitely think that heading into next year, the Pinty series obviously is what we talk about a lot on the show. I think there'll be opportunities to showcase some other racing series here on the Power Hour. Obviously the Pinty series is one thing, but we have lots of other Canadian racing series to go over, including the APC series, the Quick Wick Superstocks, Can-Am Midgets, Quick Wick Can-Am Midgets, of course, the Outlaw Midgets, Oscar Hot Rods, Oscar Modifieds. And I guess that leads into the biggest topic. I know it was talked about last week, but I want to give the opportunity for Race Rivals Race Chat to talk about it first, because they're the king daddy topper here. They're the king show. But the merger between Oscar and the United Racing Series was announced last week. This is an acquisition that could very well be very powerful for motorsports in Ontario. Now, do I believe that there's all good from this? No, there's obviously going to be some detractors, some people that don't believe that this is a great idea. Obviously, there's some people that have been in the series. I will admit I'm not as familiar with the history of Oscar, with the way the structure works, but what I saw on social media is that they're a club, and this was something that should have been brought forward and voted on. I can't really speak to all of that, but what I can speak to is that the United Racing Series does one heck of a job on their promotional side of the APC series, and the Super Stock Series. I believe both of those being broadcast on GeForce TV, that is what is attractive to Oscar. Oscar did not have those deals on a regular basis. Well, now, if they are tagged in with the APC series, you have all of a sudden a potential of, if you match up, and this is what my thinking would be, is if they match their schedule pretty much with the APC series, you put in an Oscar Hot Rod and Modified and then an APC feature, throw in Quick Wicks, 4 races in a single night. Whether I think that's actually going to happen, it's a tough call, but I think you've got an option of getting your racing series more routinely showcased on live streaming television online. But this is a phenomenal thing for the Oscar Hot Rod series, for the Oscar Modifieds. Now, where there's complications is that Sunset has also created a weekly modified division. So whether or not that's going to be able to have a good car count, I'm not sure. I don't agree with splitting classes, because when you don't have 30 odd cars every week and you're getting maybe less than 15, to split that means you could be in a really worse shape the following year. But again, I don't know all the stuff that goes into all of that. Same with like the hot rods. I think they're a major attraction. I'll be honest with you, I don't believe that the APC series needs anything to go with it. I think that they're a great attraction on their own. But talking about a television package, talking about a show with ticket prices, if all of a sudden now you're not going to see just the APC series, but you're going to see the APC series, modifieds, and you're going to see hot rods all in one show every time you go out and catch a race, I think that's a really good deal. Whether or not that is the way that they're going to go, we don't know anything really from as far as Dave Ganforth's messaging. It pretty much said that next year is going to stay the same as was scheduled. It's just going to be under the United Late Model or United Racing Series banner. This is still a positive, I think, at the end, because you're building somewhat of a ladder system again as well, right? And I think that's what NASCAR really needs here. I mean, I've said it and I'll say it again, that right now their best bet is to have the OSS series as a step up. The problem is just the OSS series, in my opinion, does need a lot of assistance in terms of promotion. Getting that assistance, getting some sponsorship, getting cars. And that's another thing that's going to be very important this year is getting cars into that series so that they can be filtered out, they can be used. They're essentially Pinty's cars. And if we can get some of those teams to be able to advance their equipment and help build it up, I think it's going to make it even better. There's definitely options there for the future, and I think that that's what's really great here. It is a really good thing. You have a really good story from last year in the Ontario Sportsman Series. You have a veteran, 30-year veteran, finally getting a win, and then being able to outlast and battle against the young rising star in Michael Herniak Jr. in the final race. And it came down to the final race, and he just got a better finishing position, and that meant he won the championship. That was a great story. And I think if you compare that to, say, the Pinty series, well, the Pinty series was kind of decided by the time we got to the last race. So maybe even kind of 2 races before that. So maybe adding options there. I still believe that if you add an RGC Sports junior team, a Team 3 Red junior team, a way to get some of those names that maybe we can't get in the Pinty series due to budgetary reasons, due to sponsorship situations. I'd say like a Matthew Scannell. Maybe you get Lane Zarda, who ran a couple of races last year in OSS. You get Jake Sheridan. These are names that all have distinct possibilities of moving up into the Pinty series at one point. But if we can get them kind of running in, say, quote, like Xfinity type of cars, that's just going to attract more eyes. And ultimately, that's what you need. I think that's what you have right now. United Racing Series is working. It's building itself up into being a can't-miss show. And I'll admit, I had never seen APC Series racing until last year, and I'm blown away by it. It is so much fun. Those cars sound absolutely beautiful. They're fast, much, much faster than the Pinty's cars. They're not as heavy, obviously, so that plays a big role in it. But I definitely think that you have a really good core of racing here in Ontario, which only can help in the interest of bringing in new partners. There's going to be a big need for partners next year. That is no question. Whether it's the Pinty Series, whether it is OSS APC, that's going to be needed. And having shows like this, having people tune in weekly to talk about their motorsports, even in the off season. Yeah, there's some people that as soon as the off season hits, they're done. They don't want to talk about racing until next year. But I'm not like that, and there's a lot of people in here that aren't like that as well. I mean, we go off and talk about what needs to be done here, what needs to be done there. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this opportunity, and we're going to talk about this past season for the NASCAR Pinty Series, because one thing we're going to celebrate is the kids going back to school after the strike was averted. We're going to do our own grading for 2022 in the Pinty Series. I want to hear from you guys in the chat. We're going to get to the grades. Unfortunately, the graphics is not working with me today. I've tried several things to try and get this to work. Unfortunately, it's not going to be probably bright enough either on the screen, so I apologize for this. But you'll see we've got a list of several drivers that were competitive and competing in the NASCAR Pinty Series this past season. We've got Glenn Stiers, JP Bergeron, TJ Renamato, Brett Taylor, Peter and Ryan Klutz, Rafael Lessard, Ray Cornamash Jr., Brandon Watson, Matthew Kingsbury, LP Montour, DJ Kennington, Alex Tagliani, Trayton Lapsovich, Kyle Steckley, Andrew Ranger. We've got the rental of the 28, which we'll talk about because there was some drivers in there that we should talk about. Daniel Bois, Alex Gannett, and Chantal Kalik grades. So we talk about grading. All right. So you've got your regular school grades, A, B, C, D, and Fs. Okay. I don't think anybody here can consider their season a failure, because everybody that, for the most part, got out to the racetrack and was able to put some results together. Whether it was what they expected, that's a different result. So we're going to start off with Glenn Stiers. Now, Glenn obviously is a veteran of motorsports, dirt racing in Ontario, who's done so much for the motorsports community, of course, in charge and the owner of Ohsweken Speedway. Now, Glenn obviously coming onto the series this year, I didn't expect it to be lightning in a bottle for him in the Zero car. But I did expect that they were going to have a little bit better competitiveness. And unfortunately, Glenn had moments where he was really strong. He got better throughout the season. He really did. He was really out to lunch those first couple of races. My biggest thing for them this year is if the WMI team didn't have mechanical failures, where would he be? Because Glenn had a lot of problems this year. Spoke with people, members of the team, and they had talked about how Glenn just couldn't get the car right. There was something off with the car, and Gary's got a point here that I just want to interrupt what I was talking about. He says, I believe NASCAR is going to need to race at some more Ontario tracks to draw drivers to the series. Not saying this because of the track I'm affiliated with. Well, I 1,000% agree with you. I know it's not a popular belief. Like, I know that people, and I know NASCAR wants to go out to all the other provinces. However, the reality is, and this is the God's honest truth, the core of this series is Ontario and Quebec. A lot of the drivers from Quebec, a lot of the sponsors from Quebec. However, most of these teams and most of these cars are from Ontario. That's the truth. Right now, do I believe that they need to be in Flamborough? Absolutely. I would go there in a heartbeat to watch them at Flamborough again, because we did only get to see one race. It was only 125 lapper. I think they belong on that type of a short track. Whether NASCAR believes that, I don't really know. Peterborough, same thing. Sauble, I'm not sure. Full Throttle, that's not going to happen. There's too small of a track, way far up there. That's just not going to happen. Second race at Delaware, absolutely love that. Quebec is the money. It's absolutely true, Gary. That is the money. And they have tracks like crazy that want to be part of the series. They have Montmagny. They have Granby that want to be part of this series. I think you have a big potential if the Cup Series, and they are talking, seriously, NASCAR is talking about going back international for 2024, as early as 2024. And to me, the only logical place to go for the Cup Series is Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. I love my CTMP, but when I look at what does NASCAR Cup want, Montreal is where they're going to go. That would be the best. I have been around this for a long time. Yeah, Gary kind of knows this. You kind of know your stuff. Jim says you can only have races where tracks are paying for events. That's part of the problem, right? Jim, is that tracks they have to be able to pay for these races. In a way, I get it. Do I think that totally makes sense? No. That's just the way it is here. The problem is that you can't go out and get a sponsor that's going to go out and pay crazy amounts of money for a Pinty Series race. And I'm not trying to shoot the series in the foot or anything like that, but the reality is if it's not on a mainstream cable network, it's not going to get the interest because it's not going to get the viewership. If you were to tell me that what are sponsors going to be putting more money into? Are they going to put money into a race at Peterborough, or are they going to put something into a race at Toronto or Montreal or GP3R? That's the reality there, right? That's a hard sell. But what Gary's point is it's absolutely true, is that if you go back to these weekly racing tracks, you'll get more competitors to come out there. Now, that is true when we're going out to Atlantic Canada. There's absolutely truth to that. There's already been names that I know of. I've heard it's something crazy, Gary, in a couple tens of thousands as the cost for paying for an event. And to me, that's just ridiculous. Considering there's a lot that the tracks don't get back from that. If I believe it's in the 20,000 range, but I could be completely off, Gary. I only have hearsay. I have no absolute knowledge as to what the actual costs are. But to me, if that is the truth, that's part of the deal here. So again, there's definite pluses, there's definite minuses to going into these racetracks, but I know people that are in the series want it to be like the Cup Series. They want it to be Canada's series. Well, the problem is you got to start somewhere, and we have to start small. I mean, I've said it for a while that you have to take it back to the basics, and really basic is how you have to go. You have to remember back in NASCAR, NASCAR had a Western division, right? And I think essentially what they could do is have the RS1 series be promoted by NASCAR. I mean, it's not that I'm suggesting they take over that series, but listen, for Western drivers, RS1 is the best deal going around. It's closer to home for them. It does need some work in terms of promotion and video and all of that, but for local businesses, for guys that have local businesses like a Brett Taylor, that's more beneficial to him to run at an RS1 race than to travel back and forth where they're racing in spots that maybe those sponsorships don't have business. So that's a very tough sell. And he's right. Gary says, tracks pay for APC races. It's in general, you pay for the events. I think a lot of tracks obviously aren't in that safety position right now. Racing in Canada is so tough, money wise. Jim says, I don't know the Canadian TV and radio world, but is it government run or is it private networks to get events on would take interest from networks, or is it a buy time thing for a race series? pretty sure, Jim, it's not government run, it's private, and that is a really tough sell, unfortunately, because remember, motorsports in Canada is not a top series. It's not a top sport. We have to compete against Toronto Blue Jays baseball, against the Toronto Raptors, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, not to mention all the other provinces hockey teams like the Montreal Canadiens, like the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames, the Vancouver Canucks. You're asking a lot of that. Not only that, is that you'd have to compete against other sports that are maybe not as popular, say, in other countries, like curling. That is the biggest watch sport. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our good buddy Joel Robinson may have confirmed this a while back, that curling is actually the highest watched sport in Canada, especially in Western Canada. The CFL gets a lot of love. The NFL gets a lot of love. So you've got a lot. You're right, Gary, because NASCAR did get government help because they used to carry. I don't have a perfect example here, unfortunately, but all of my NASCAR race cars are packed away. But they used to carry a government of Canada logo on the NASCAR race cars, and they got so much support. And the problem is that I don't really know if anybody's approached the government around it. We talked about this a while back about, okay, take an opportunity. We talked about this that, for me, TSN is great, but not everybody has TSN, right? That's the reality. You got to go to a mainstream channel. It has to be like one of those basic cable channels, like a CTV. Majority of people would have like a CP24, something like that. I know CP24 typically does go out to the Indy every year. They were there this past year. They interviewed Brent Weller. Global was out at Autumn Colors Classic. They were interviewing some people. Jim says, block me if you want, but the curling thing is a little odd to us Yanks. Well, I get it. I get it. But try playing it, Jim. Then see. It might not be your thing watching-wise, but it definitely is interesting. So, yeah, I think that we talked about this before. I think marketing opportunity-wise, you've got a guy like Tony Spiteri. Tony knows what you need to do. To me, I want to see race. I work in downtown Toronto. I would love to see some of these teams bring their race cars down to Yonge Dundas Square and park them in Yonge Dundas Square for an afternoon. That's a way to get some attention. Rev those cars up, get people out there. The tough time is like, how do you go and do that? Well, you'd have to more than likely contact the city. You'd have to do a lot of that type of work, but you got to go where a lot of the money is. And that might not be a popular opinion, but the reality is the city of Toronto has a ton of money. A lot of financial money where I work in the financial district. Lots of entertainment, headquarters. It's a good way to get seen. I think the biggest thing that we've talked about is, okay, how many people don't even know that NASCAR Pinty's exists? And I think the reality is that I think I'm sure, Gary, you did. I'm pretty sure because that's what I remember it from. The thing that we have to work on here is proper promotion. The reality is a lot of people know NASCAR. Still, to this day, they know NASCAR. There's a lot of people who will never, ever, ever watch the Pinty series because they are so mad that NASCAR came in and took the series. I mean, I've seen comments, I've seen it online, that there's still a lot of hostility. There's still a lot of frustration. Jomo has one of the best points actually here. That's an excellent idea. I think drivers should get their cars into Santa Claus parades as well. That's a phenomenal idea. Pinty's, that's a great opportunity to get their to get their race car in the you don't have a float, but you have a couple race cars driving down the parade route. I think that would be awesome. Be so cool to have DJ Kennington's car and Trayton Lapsevich going around. You have people from the series there, officials in their uniform, in their driver's suit. That's a good way to do it. Exactly like you said, Gary, it's what they've done in Edmonton this past year, what they did in Newfoundland. They did a parade. That's how you do it. It's the hauler parade, right? I like the idea of marching the cars down. As Mr. Showbiz says, they used to bring the cars to the TD Bank Plaza. Yeah, that's exactly where I work, is right down there, to promote the NASCAR Indy race. See? Something like that can go a long way. And the problem is as I've talked about, there's a lot of problems when it comes to who's the person that's going to take the charge of this, right? Who's the person that's going to make sure that happens? Alan says, I tried to get a bunch of fire trucks in the Toronto parade and was told it's a parade of fantasy, so no. And Pickering parade canceled again today. So, again, this is just theoretical. Going to parades is basically free advertisement almost everywhere. Not to mention, what's one thing, Jim, that a lot of parades have? They have kids, right? Kids will go crazy seeing a lot of things. But to see a race car is pretty cool too, because it's not something you would probably see in real life. That's the one thing that I remember. I mean, Al's in the chat here. I didn't know there was NASCAR in Canada. I never knew about NASCAR for years. I only watched what was on television. I only knew about NASCAR from the cars that I had. I didn't think that was a thing in Canada. So if all of a sudden you have these guys towing their cars or rolling, like I just think about, you have the NASCAR Pinty Series hauler drive through downtown Toronto and have 2 or 3 race cars behind it, add in. And that's the thing. Don't make it just the Pinty Series. Add in a team from the Ontario Sportsman Series. Add in a hot rod team. Add in some legends. Make it a Canadian motorsports showcase. I mean, we have Motorama, right? Motorama is great, but again, as I've talked to Al about this a couple of times, is that it is for people that like cars. There's a small racing scene there, true, but there's not a Canadian motorsports arama. Ideally, that's what you'd want to have. Jomo Noah says, definitely need to try and get the kids hooked. I'll say that's exactly it, Noah, right? Because when kids, they're the future fans, right? It's getting the kids hooked at a young age as to, oh my gosh, look what I just saw. And that's why some of these sponsorships are so key, because if you look at some of the sponsors that they do have in the Cup Series, one of those ones that was the most popular for so many years was what? M&M's. Why? Because kids absolutely love the M&M's car. They like M&M's. It was, for me, it was the Kellogg's car with Tony the Tiger on the front of it for Terry Labonte. That was, as soon as I saw it, it was like, that's my favorite car. As soon as I saw it. And I wanted to cheer on the Tony the Tiger car. Now, obviously built on from that, but it is exactly what attracts audiences, is connection. And so when my dad took me to the NASCAR race and I saw a Home Hardware car or Canadian Tire car, it was like, oh my God. Then Jason White came up with his A&W car. It was so cool because it was like, these are, I don't see these in the US. These are Canadian sponsors. Jomo says, when Pinty Series goes to these cities, they need to get on local. Yes. Local morning televisions like BT Television, 100%. If you're doing this, you're getting Dina and Sid into a race car and doing donuts in the parking lot. Like, that's what you do, right? I love Terry. Terry's my favorite, man. Gary, he's always going to be my favorite. Need to organize a motorsports parade at a time before the season starts, like April. Mr. Showbiz, I have to rely on some faceless here. Faceless here to post the Pinty series to watch the races. That's the sad truth still, right? Mr. Showbiz, guys, it's not the easiest to locate. If you're not, you have to have subscription. Like, that's the reality about a lot of motorsports now, is that you have to be able to you have to sign up first off. You have to pay. And a lot of people just said, no, I'm not doing that. And do I agree? Yes, I do. I agree that sucks. Personally, I don't like having to pay for a lot of things either. And especially when it comes to paying for cable, you have to buy a certain level of cable to be able to get TSN. It's not just basic. So I totally get this. I totally do. I totally get that. However, that is the way that things are going. You have Netflix, Amazon, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus. There's no such thing as just it being available on cable television anymore. I think ultimately having a streaming platform for NASCAR is the way to go. The other thing too we have to remember is the amount of money that this all takes. Lots of comments now. Al says, and A&W gave out cans of pop. He always brings this up. That's his favorite story. We went to countless races, but my dad will always remember getting the free cans of A&W root beer. I remember with Challenger Motor, or not Challenger, with Brad Graham's sponsor, Full Throttle, energy drink. They had energy drinks they were giving out. Dickies used to give out these little hard hat squish stress balls. Mr. Showbiz guy says TSN Pinty series scheduling is a mess. I wouldn't say it's a mess, but I think it gets pushed away. Mr. Showbiz guy, I think it's not a priority. I mean, you're giving us a 1 hour tape delay on cable, right? Now, streaming, it's done a amazing job. For where we were a couple years ago, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Lots of work still to be done. I think if you have certain guys that want to do a pre-race show, definitely do it and make it available, because these guys would love to do a pre-race show and a post-race show, get lots of people talking about it, because that is what they like. That's what people crave, is to talk about it. Here we go. As a side note, the Mars family of M&Ms live and hang in an office about a mile from where I am listening to this. Hey, those M&M people, man, if you want to send them up here, Jim, we would more than gladly take the Mars family. We need a couple Snickers and M&M's cars up here. Terry says, problem with this idea would be conflicting with car rebuilds and new wraps during the offseason. Almost need a generic car showcase by each division, wrapped with different series on them. You know what, Terry? That's a great idea. Having different series with just a wrap on it. Perfect idea. I mean, they have if I'm not mistaken, Tony still has the 43 Charger wrapped with Pinties on it. So you could, if that car can run, why not? Jomo says, I'm so thankful for the guy on YouTube. The Ottoman Empire, man. Fantastic guy. If you go further back, also have Battioli Race Fan. If you want to see stuff from like 2014, Battioli Race Fan 88 has some of them. His are all split up, but you want to look at the Ottoman Empire, Automan, Ottoman Empire. He's the one that posts and started posting French and English. So good for him. I'm so thankful for the guy on YouTube. Sucks, I know who the winner is, but be able to watch after the race, even after it airs on TSN, because they play it on TV at ridiculous times. This has never changed, unfortunately, Jomo. This has always been the case. I remember that there would be some cases where it would be like at 9 a.m. and because it was on before, I think it was on right after Driving TV, the Jim Kenzie show on TSN. But Cam K, get the running shoes out for a Cam K pit walk run. If you looked at me, you would know I don't run, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely do it in a heartbeat. I've said before, like, even if it's just an audio from the racetrack, it doesn't have to be video. It's just an audio show, audio broadcast of the show, of the race as well. Like I said before, I have no problem commentating a race. You know, this the more people that you can get out to, if more people can get it on a live stream, say like Race Time Radio is a perfect example, do it. I mean, NASCAR I know has has a lot of rules regarding their streaming platforms, has a lot of rules regarding whether or not they have stuff live streaming or not. So there you go. There's the feed on Flow Racing, Jomo says, right? We need a pre-race and a post-race to discuss the race. And I said, that's great. I love doing it here. The idea would be to be able to do a pre-race and a post-race on G-Force in the off-season, like in the current season, if I'm not at the race. Gary, I know you're not going to win. You're not going to win nothing if you want to pay to see me run, because that ain't happening. I can barely move in my condo without losing my breath or falling down or hurting myself somehow. We'll see if we get there eventually. I've got some orthotics now, so hopefully next year I'll be able to move a little bit better. But Cam over the wall, Cam's got to be able to get over the wall first, though, Terry. That's the problem, right? Yeah, it's about the movement, right? I am not Clinton. I can't be running all over the racetrack, man. I'm gonna have my puffer on just attached to me like a gas mask. But I don't know, man. Tony would definitely I think appreciate more ideas, but you don't want to overload him either, right? In the first year, I think that's the reality. Is that I need a cameraman to follow me, and that's I don't think Al wants to be doing that. He's got a bum knee. We don't need him running all over the place either. So, we're definitely interested in trying to showcase as much more Canadian racing as possible this year. I'm really curious to see what the schedule is for next year. I think that right now things are supposed to be pretty well the same as last year. The only change that I've heard and was posted is that Granby apparently is expecting to be aboard, but that's a second dirt race. I don't know if oh, Jomo, you stop trying to get me stop trying to make the audience laugh, man. That's we don't need to be doing that. I think it's only fair though, Jomo, is if we have a race between yourself and myself. I think that's the way that it works, right? I can't be the only guy out there that's doing that. So, at least of all the tracks he picked, it was Flamborough, right? I mean, it would be easier to do it like CTMP, you go down the hill. At least you got some help there, right? But, you know what? We're gonna have to get out to Flamborough. We weren't able to get out there this past year, and I really do miss it. It's one of my favorite tracks, and I think maybe a race from the wall over to the Flamberger would be a good idea, Al. But I think that there's a lot for between the two of us. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for saving me, so it's not just me. But oh man, yeah. See, this is what you get, Jomo. This is what you get. You get roped in. Oh man, you'll call it over the mic. No. We don't need to be doing this. Yeah, nothing like having a bunch of us guys trying to run. Yeah, that's always going to be a terrible terrible idea. Like I said, I've hurt myself so much as it is that I'd rather not attempt this and then hurt myself again. But oh, I'm getting all embarrassed here. Battle of the podcast. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's glad to have you guys in with us talking about the racing scene. You know, we were going to go talk about grading and stuff, but it actually works out because you guys brought in some really good points and talked about a lot of different things. You know, we could put you in sumo suits. I think we've already got those, Gary. I don't think we need anything else. We don't need anything else added. Oh man. But yeah, we're excited. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff to look forward to next year. You know, we've got Pinty series, obviously, we'll be back more than likely 13 races again. You don't, Al's trying to plug something here, but we can definitely talk about that. He doesn't need to plug it because it's something that we're going to bring up later on in the episode. But if you haven't already, go out and get yourself the Ladies of the Oval calendar. This is an excellent promotion. We actually just had on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, Randy Butler and Samantha Shaw, two amazing young ladies from Sunset Speedway, who put together this calendar, and all the proceeds go towards a sponsorship. Yeah, you can put us in Gary put us in the Ladies of the Oval. Yeah, that's great. Mr. Showbiz Guy, we're still going through our second round on the Paint Scheme Challenge. So right now, it is Dexter and Wallace Stacy who are right now destroying the. Well, I don't know, Terry. I'm saying 13. I've heard as much as 15 though, so I don't know. So right now, Mr. Showbiz Guy, currently the Stacys are leading Trayton Lapsovich in round 2. Other results from round number 2 in the Paint Scheme Challenge include Glenn Stiers beat out Brent Weller. Pretty handily in that, actually, in that round. And then JP Bergeron and Daniel Bois were in the second. And actually, I haven't updated it here, but Daniel Bois and MBS Motorsports defeated JP Bergeron. That was a really close battle. Right now, it's not really as close. I expect there'll be some good ones later on here. We've got some good battles, I think, coming on. There's definitely the purple is loved. Terry, I think that's going to be that's going to be a tough sell though, because there's a couple other ones here in this second round. DJ Kennington's obviously, he's got a purple as well. So, it'd be tough. Noah says, I'd love to see its 15 race season. It has been talked about. I don't know the reality. I know that a guy like JC Payet, after talking with him, he'd love to get to 15 races. I think his idea is having it like the Cup Series and having like 20 odd races in the year. The reality is, we probably can't do that. But 15 compared to 13, that's an expansion. But if you do it, you've got to go to Flamborough or Peterborough. You have to go back and do more races in Ontario. You do Montmagny or Granby, absolutely, or a second race at Delaware. I'd be all for that. I think also the teams need to get out to the kart clubs and do a development drive. Absolutely. And so many kids racing now and lots of great tracks to attend. Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. You need a ladder system. You need to be able to build talent. And I thought RGC Sports was kind of doing this by having some sponsorship on Ryden Lapsovich, on Dustin Momberquette, on Jason Parker. So, not that Jason Parker's in driver development. He's not. But they could do that. I think, Gary, if you're going to do it, have driver development teams in the OSS series to start, because the cars are the most similar. I think you get the class, the NASCAR Pinty's class of whatever, 23, and I'm telling you, you get young names in that series. You get Ray Morneau, you get Garrett Tiemersma, Lane Zardo, Carson Nagy. Get names that have some familiarity with Ontario fans. Get some names that people know already and have fan bases. And I'll tell you right now that if there was a name I'm going to go behind to bring up to the Pinty series, it is going to be Ray Morneau Jr. Because when we were at that Delaware race, I mean, Al can talk about it, that was absolutely the biggest cheer when we were there, was Ray Morneau. And if it's me, 22 Racing's got to get him in there. If it's EHR, they've got to get him in there. EHR had Jake Sheridan. Jake got a lot of good cheers as well. So there's a lot of great guys there. The problem is, it's just the budgets. Well, if the budgets aren't big enough for a Pinty series ride, then invest in a car and put that car in the OSS series, which runs all these short tracks in Ontario. As was talked about last week, though, the problem is that they're only on short tracks. What you need to get some of these guys to get experience on these road course and street courses. That's the tough thing. We have so many kids down that move south and are spending money down there. Look at Mac Clark. Mac Gary, to me, I think he's going IndyCar though. Like that's the guy to do it. I would have liked to seen some guys though, like say Zachary Clayman DeMello was in the Road to Indy series for many years, and where did his career go? James Hinchcliffe is another one. I think Hinch, if we got the opportunity last year to get him in a car, and we tried, it didn't work out. But Hinch is one of those names that in Toronto, you have to go out and get somebody like that. It was crazy the amount of support that Ray had there. I was absolutely blown away. No, I felt like all of Windsor was there by far. And we're talking louder than really anybody. All these Pinty Series veterans. DJ Kennington. DJ's was pretty loud, but I think Ray's was actually louder. And, I'm telling you that there is something there. And that's the type of guy that you bring into a series. It's automatic. He's going to have a lot of fans. He's got a lot of people that support him already. It's just about that budget. And that's the tough thing. So if you can't do the budget, then OSS, we've talked about it. Kevin Trevlin was on the Stickers and Scumps podcast last week. He talked about it. It is literally a fraction of the budget, not even close to what you have to spend, but it's getting experience behind those type of cars. A way to bring up some of the young talent. I mean, you've got Michael Herniak Jr. down there, Brendan Patrick, second-generation drivers, third-generation drivers. They're down there racing. Brad Robinson's another one. Young kids that are racing against some of these really good veterans. And like we're talking the McGlynn's down there. You're talking Sean Mangin back out there. Obviously, Kevin Trevlin's been out there. Kevin DeMore. Guys that have been, and of course, Mark Patrick's. These guys have been racing for, Patrick Racing is celebrating 40 years in motorsports this year or next year. Noah says they were sitting right behind where I was, so I heard it for sure. They were loud. They were really loud for him. And the thing is, Paul Tracy, as long as you have a good body man on the team, would pack the place. Paul Tracy would absolutely pack it. I said for a while that Paul would be somebody, but I don't know if Paul would come up and do it, honestly. I think it would have to be, I don't know what his SRX deal is, but they would do that, Most of the OSS cars are from Windsor, not many in the center of Ontario. That's the way to fix it, though, Gary. Right? If you're able to have those junior teams, a perfect example to me is Team 3 Red. I think EHR is one of those teams that I would trust. Jason Hathaway. Jason's a phenomenal teacher, and I think that Jason would do it. Obviously, it just depends if they have a car. 22 Racing. Hard. See, the thing is it's so much more complicated because it's not just you have to have a car, but you have to have people to crew it too, right? But you take those guys. I think you take even a RGC Sports junior team if they did something like Dilly ran 2 cars or whatever. 2 cars in Kitchener. I believe that's McGlynn's stuff out of Kitchener. He's got 2 cars. That's another one. You got Tolton that runs his car. That's a rental. So we have opportunities to get some names out there. I know Trevlin's got a rental, and so does Tolton. So, again, those would be opportunities to get those young guys in there. I mean, Lane Zardo got into Tolton's car at Flamborough in the first race of the year and finished 3rd, and probably would have won the race if it wasn't rain shortened. So, it's definitely true. Ottawa has a car, too. It is hard when so far apart. It's very true, Gary. A lot of the problem with the OSS field is that they're so far spread around. But the hope is that you can get enough guys that have a car to come out. I've heard some names that are from CASCAR that still have their race cars. I haven't raced in years, but they're just holding on to that car. And, I'd like to see, again, guys like we saw Alex Gannett come out and run a couple of times. You saw Sam Fellows out there. Having the OSS series schedule kind of merge or have some similarity, running as a companion event would help that. I don't know what their schedule is going to look like for them and for both, but I'd say you're looking Sunset, Delaware. Those are your best options. If they can get in with, if OSS can get in and run, when the APC series runs, it'd probably be very, very hard now because of the super stocks being affiliated, but and then with NASCAR being affiliated, but they need television. They need streaming. They need to be on a platform like GeForce TV or GeForce Lite. It's a tough market out there, and we definitely have a lot of hope for next year. But obviously, we wanted to make sure that we paid some tribute to Bob Merrifield tonight. Paid some tribute to Coy Gibbs. I want to thank each and one of you for tuning in tonight. We had a lot of fun. This was a very good conversation. We got going right towards the middle. We didn't even get to grading anybody yet because you guys picked up the conversation, and that's what we're here for. Just keep it going all year long and see what else we can do in the off season. Issue is, say, a race at Flamborough not raining, but raining in London. Guys won't take the chance to race. It is very true. That happened last year. And that's the way it needs to be built. You got to have enough people out there. Dalton Scar is in rental. Animal Shanty, I'm saying like last year it was available as a rental, so he rented it out. Whether he does that this year or not, I guess you're saying he's not going to do that this year. Totally cool. I know he ran it because he wasn't able to make some races last year because I believe it's because he was working at full throttle. Hopefully he is able to do it next year. I still think that Tim would be fun to be full time if he can do it. He was able to get a win last year, and I'm sorry I missed it. Yeah, Tim's gonna be part of the SNS roster this year. Great guy, and really excited to see that 3-car back out there. I hope he's able to run. Animal Shanty, I apologize if that's incorrect. That's just what was told to me. But I hope he gets the Monte Carlo body back on it, because that was always the best part about it, is that he still ran the Monte Carlo. That's the best part I kind of like about this series, is that you got the Monte Carlos. For a while, you had the Pontiac Grand Prix. They didn't have any last year, but Camaros, Avengers, Challengers, and then, of course, you've got Trevlin, who ran a Charger last year. So it'll be a lot of fun next year to see what happens, at least with OSS. Obviously, with Pinty Series, hopefully they'll be able to work something out and run some competitive companion events. I think that, like I said, a lot of people will go out, and if they haven't seen the Tolton car, for example, that's going to hook a lot of people, because that's a beautiful looking car. As long as it stays the red. I don't know if it's going to stay the red for forever, but yeah, perfect example. Noah, the Fellows Impala. Jim Bray still has that car, man. It could probably go back and run in OSS if he really wanted to, but definitely a lot of fun out here. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun today. All the best to all of you guys in the coming week. We will be back next week at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Noah. Animal Shanty for tuning in. Mike Russell. Mr. Showbiz, Terry. Appreciate all of you guys. Jomo, of course. Jim Haynes, one of our loyal followers, and has been a listener since we started this show. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. Let us know, of course, in the comments if you'd like to see more. We'll try and do some grading next week. We'll talk about each and every driver and see what we can come up with how we felt their seasons went. But everybody, have a safe week,